much. All right, Guy Adami. I mean, Apple, we were talking on this program a couple months ago. Apple's having a tough year. Why isn't it kind of riding with the other Mag 7 and big tech? Boom, new record high for Apple.
Couple things. Welcome.
Thank you.
Did you read, was that in the prompter, that thank you that you read, or did you just add
I wrote that.
You wrote it yourself?
Yeah.
On the fly.
On the fly.
Yeah.
Nihongo no kurasu desu. Welcome to Japanese.
Mr. Roboto.
I used to work for Mitsubishi.
Is that
Bank.
Mr. Roboto?
So, I believe so. Number 3, Tim Seymour's been all over this now for quite some time. You know, he has pointed out that there are a number of reasons to dislike Apple, but there are more reasons to like it, and that a lot of what's happening now was not priced in. He's spot on. Now, the problem I've had incorrectly is valuation, and it's still a valuation problem at close to 33 times next year's numbers. But the iPhone sales in China surprised people clearly. I think year over year up by 14%. Which is a good thing. Earnings are coming up, obviously, but you have to sort of wrap your head around valuation. I think Lou put a $315 price target on the tape that we're having. That's not inconceivable to see, but you're paying up here, in my opinion.
It's interesting because thank you for the kind words, Guy, but, you know, I mean, look, it's not as if I've been screaming the bull. My view has been glass half full because I do think if you told me that Apple, given the 3-year run we've had, the 3-year bull market that we've had since October of 22, that Apple's flat to the S&P, held serve in an environment where they've had nothing. They've had no AI. They've had no innovation. I'd say this is a great place to be for the stock. That's my bull thesis. And I think, you know, the fact that they also announced their M5 chip on Friday, which certainly helps in some of their products. It's 4 times the processing power, gets them in an AI space. The fact that Steve pointed out hardware really can be something that's still a driver, even if it doesn't change that much.
I think if Tim...
He's giving me the stiff arm.
If Tim...
Like,
hold on, I want to back up. You said something important, as you always do. If Tim Cook was sitting here right now, and by the way, he's welcome anytime.
Yeah, no, he's a big fan of the show.
He would push back on your lack of innovation comment because he would say M5 chip, thinner, better camera, better battery life. That's how he would push back. And I wonder if are consumers pushing back with this increased upgrade cycle?
Well, the pushback is in saying pushback on lack of innovation.
The bears are wrong.
It's clear, and it's at least clear, or there's some type of a snag in the production, in essentially the product manufacturing cycle, which I don't think is what it is. I believe Apple which is flat on the year, and at this point also people are looking for a rotation. Some of this to me is part of everyone's going tactical today. I'll go tactical on this one too, even though I would be fundamentally a long-term owner of Apple and have been. I do think you have a case where people are underpositioned in Apple, you know, in Amazon, which is down small on the year, and Apple, which is flat on the year. Investors are looking for these stories.
Well, it's interesting. In a market like this, you're starting to look for stuff that might have the opportunity to break out, that might have the opportunity to play catch up. Tim just said this, that versus the S&P 500 has been flat for the last 3 years or so. I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that both of what these guys have said. It wasn't a growth story, but it was trading at a growth multiple. You know, it wasn't an innovator in AI, and a lot of those companies that had been were getting a multiple for that. So now you get to a point where you see some hardware cycle finally. You talk about, I think Kovac just said this, the fastest upgrade cycle since COVID. Well, a lot of these phones are on that 3rd, 4th year. Sooner or later, you just have to upgrade. But the more important piece to me is that China growth, right? And if you think that we're coming out of what's going to be a contentious period with China, and we're going to have a kick the can down the road situation with our trade, and you see the Chinese stimulating or subsidizing iPhones, that's certainly saying something to me. So, you know, at the end of the day, if Apple can kind of bridge this gap between they get this Siri, this new setup as it relates to Apple Intelligence, then they are well set up, you know what I mean, to kind of take market share. And the whole point about the multiple, if you can continue pushing that hardware out, which doesn't have the multiple, but you get Apple Intelligence, and then you start seeing services growth on top of that, that's how this story, I think, really starts to work in 2026. Last thing, looking at my fact set, of the top 10 Tesla in the mega cap, this is the only one that has about 60% of the analysts rate the stock a buy. Everyone else has about 85, 90, 95. So sentiment is not great on the street right now relative to this name.
$253, I think, median price target, although analysts are kind of all over the board. Mike Coe, you look at stocks, but you also look at options. You kind of look at the idea of this market structure. Stocks tend to go up because there's more buying pressure than selling pressure. A lot of good fundamental reasons why Apple rising right now. But what are you seeing on the structure side? Are you surprised by Apple's strength?
Well, I'm kind of with Tim on this, and Dan too, in the sense that there is sort of there was this lag, and now there is a perception that the iPhone 17 actually has some meaningful improvements, gives people a reason for that upgrade. And you referenced that camera. It's not just the camera; it's the software inside that also makes a big difference for people who use it for photography, and more importantly for videography. They got ProRes RAW in there now, which is sort of important for anybody who uses this for video. The valuation question, I think it still remains 32.5 times forward, so it's trading at a premium to the S&P with S&P-like levels of top and bottom line growth. But really, I think the important thing to think about is whether or not they're going to start grabbing some market share, and that's what Dan was talking about with China. And the good news is, for people who are interested in options, they're actually pretty cheap right here. Right now, the options market's implying a move of about 3.9% when they report on the 30th. And just looking ahead 30, 60 days, the options, again, are cheap. So I think call spreads, if you want to sort of press along here, would be a way to do it if you're a little bit nervous about the valuation, which I remain.